Hi, I'm Dave Epstein. Welcome to this edition of Growing Wisdom, and today we're going to talk about how to repot an orchid. And for that, I'm bringing in my friend Oaks Austin, who's going to show us how. So Oaks has a really large orchid. It's definitely pot bound, and we're going to change that.
Well, first, you can see that some of the bark in the medium is getting kind of black, even on the surface. So that tells me that down below it's probably starting to rot pretty badly, which limits airflow to the roots. And since these are epiphytes in nature, meaning they grow on trees generally, they really need airflow to the roots, otherwise the roots will start to rot. Also, as you can see, whoever pot this before did kind of a weird job and put it really high in the pot. And now it's got this weird growth habit where it's like climbing out of the pot. And that's not very good. So I think it's time to divide it and put a couple in different pots and put them all sitting properly in the pot. So first I'm just going to pull it out of the pot. And as you can see, there's a lot of roots coming out the bottom. So I'm going to have to be a little rough, but it's okay if some of them get broken. We're going to be cutting a lot of roots because it's so dense here anyway. So we're just going to have to hope that it can grow new ones and bounce back quickly. The medium is definitely starting to rot. It almost looks like regular soil at this point. The original large bark chips are very decomposed, so there's definitely not a lot of air getting down here. Although surprisingly, the roots look fairly good, even though they are brown. Most of these are alive. As you can see, if you cut them open, they're still nice and white and fleshy inside. Whereas a dead root, let's see, a dead root is just like a papery husk. That's how you know it's dead. So I'm going to try to coax these roots apart with my hands, being as gentle as I can, but that may not work. And in that case, I'm going to have to start cutting apart these different pieces with clippers and just pulling them apart by force.
One thing to notice is that you probably are being a little rougher than you might otherwise think you could be. I think one of the mistakes that a lot of people make is they're actually a little too gentle sometimes when they're repotting, and it goes for not just orchids, but any plant. So you do have to get this thing kind of loosened because Oaks is going to make several different pots of this particular variety of orchid. So it's been a couple of minutes and you're kind of looking at it. What's your thought process right now?
Well, I'm realizing that it's just so pot bound that I'm going to have to cut it apart in order to get it apart. I can't just pull it. So I'm looking for pieces that look like they belong as separate plants. So this one right here definitely belongs on its own. And then this is a little harder to tell, but I think this whole piece right here can be separated from this center sort of towering spire that we've got going on here.
So he's broken up the big orchid now into much smaller ones, and he's cleaning up the roots a little bit. We'll revisit this in a second and tell you exactly what he's been looking for. You broke these up into 12 little plants here. What did you look for so that we know that it's going to survive?
Well, first of all, I wanted nice big pseudobulbs for some of these clumps at least, so that they could bloom soon, hopefully next season. So these four are looking pretty good. They could probably bloom next season or the season after. These ones are much weaker, so they're not going to bloom anytime soon. But we know that they have a chance of survival because you can see there's these little buds here. And these buds can give rise to new pseudobulbs. And pseudobulbs are these structures here, which are water storage organs for the orchid, which allow it to survive as an epiphyte even in semi-arid conditions, like in dry forests in Mexico and Central America, where most cattleyas are from.
The thought process here as we move forward.
So I'm repotting 3 big pieces into this single pot. I'm trying to get them so that they can grow for a few years in this pot before we have to repot them. So I'm going to put all the newest pseudobulbs towards the outside and try to squeeze them into the center as much as possible so that they can all grow towards the outside and expand. Because as this type of orchid grows, it basically just continually adds on pseudobulbs in a string. And eventually it will just grow out over the edge of the pot. And we don't really want that to happen. So I'm going to try to keep that from happening for as long as possible. And I'm just going to fill in some bark around the roots to try to stabilize it. Add some mica too. I'm just temporarily staking these up so that they don't flop out of the pot.
When would you water this particular plant?
I want to let the roots have a chance to heal over a little bit, hopefully, since I damaged them so much. So I'm probably not going to water this for another day or two. It's pretty warm in here, so it will dry out fast. So I do want to water it fairly soon.
I want to thank Oaks for helping us out here to show us how to repot that orchid. And a fairly simple process, but follow those steps and you can give the orchids away to friends, or now you have 2, 3, 4, 5 more. For Growing Wisdom, I'm Dave Epstein.